Okay, Rick, I mean, look, it's straightforward, guys. Clemson's in, Oklahoma's in, Georgia's in. I don't think there's any doubt about those three, and it's going to come down to Alabama and Ohio State. So how do you think the committee will view this?
Okay, not having seen Alabama play a lot, you look at their schedule, you look at their resume, it doesn't compare to Ohio State. So if we're saying Alabama or Ohio State, it's got to be Ohio State. I do think the committee, if they don't say it, they think this. If we take not a great Alabama team, a good Alabama team over a Big Ten Conference champion, and we leave two of the Power Fives out at the expense of an average to good Alabama team, not a great Alabama team, I think that's a bad precedent to set.
Well, I think that's part of the key. When you look at this Alabama team, they kind of get a pass for most of the part because they are Alabama. But people that have watched them, and I've watched them, it's not a great Alabama team, as you mentioned. They've had a lot of injuries on the defensive side. Dave, you already mentioned the fact of who they've played. The resume does not compare to what Ohio State has been able to do now winning the Big Ten Championship. So you look at the resume, the schedule, the teams that Ohio State has beaten, couple that with being the conference champion, I think it's hard. The committee is going to be hard for them to leave Ohio State out.
Yeah, and I don't think the committee has to say anything about leaving two teams out. They don't need to bring that in the conversation. They just need to use the resume like you two guys have described all day long and say Ohio State's one of the best four. The messaging doesn't have to be we're not leaving two out.
No, they're going to have 3 wins that are better than any win that Alabama has. Kirby Hocutt said this week that there wasn't much of a difference between 5 and 8, that there was intense debate as they slotted those. Alabama was 5, Ohio State was 8. Remember, if two teams are comparable, according to the committee, and Kirby Hocutt has essentially said they're comparable, then you have to use the criteria that are laid out, and one of those is conference championships won. Yeah. So if you think a team is unequivocally better, and that is their language, then you can bypass that, and you can say it doesn't matter that they didn't win a conference championship. That was what they felt last year because Ohio State had beaten 3 teams in the top 8. But you need to make the argument that Alabama's unequivocally better. And, again, based on the eye test this year, it just doesn't seem that way.
And that's the thing. People will talk about the eye test. This is when you need to apply it. They're just not as dominant as they've been in the past, offensively or defensively. And for that reason, you've got to take Ohio State.
Yeah, I think the committee stands on very firm ground picking Ohio State. They certainly have enough of their procedural things to support their decision, if that's what they do.
You're going to hear a lot about Ohio State's loss to Iowa. It was not a good loss, no doubt, but we know that 4 top 10 teams have lost in Iowa City in the last 10 years. It is a very difficult place to play, so that has borne itself out.
And I think the committee will and has valued the Badgers. Yes, they struggled as far as the schedule. Well, it wasn't great, but the team that played out here was a good football team.
They're the people that ranked them 4th, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And the other issue, I mean, there are a lot of issues for Alabama. Fresno State losing, they'll drop out of the top 25. That was a top 25 win, right? Auburn, right? So, well, look at the team they lost to. They lost to the hottest team in college football. Auburn didn't look the part today.
A 3-loss Auburn.
Right. Yeah.
They can do this.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll be fascinating to see because it's going to come down to good wins or a perceived bad loss and how they weigh those. But again, there just doesn't seem to be a whole lot of, in terms of a leg to stand on for Alabama.
Plus, we need some more gear, national championship gear. So
it does come down to us. One last thing that I think bears mentioning. If you are trying to incentivize scheduling, the SEC plays 8 conference games, the Big Ten plays 9. The SEC plays FCS teams. The Big Ten, as a league total, played 3 games against the FCS. So if, again, you're comparing these teams and you reward the team that did not schedule as hard, then you are incentivizing teams not to schedule well. And then I think conferences are going to have to rethink what they're doing.
I'm not so sure about that, but I hear you.
You know, why aren't you sure about that?
I don't think the committee thinks like that. I don't think they think their job is to incentivize the SEC. We're talking about the SEC, right? I mean, that's all we're talking about is the SEC going another game. I don't think the SEC is going to succumb to that pressure because of their schedule. I don't think they see themselves that way.
Right. I'm saying
they're going to get a team in this year.
No, I understand. But what I'm saying is the rest of the leagues then would say, well, why are we doing what we're doing?
Because they need it. The SEC. I'm talking what the SEC's thinking.
Right.
The SEC say we don't need it. The other leagues may need it, but we don't need it. We can stay with 8. That's what I think.
Yeah. Oh, interesting. Yeah. I don't know. It's going to be fascinating to see how this plays out because you do have 2 of the biggest name brand programs in all of college football And Twitter's going to be interesting. What?
And the gear.
Yeah, and the gear.
The gear's interesting.
Great night here in Indianapolis. Another nail-biter of Big Ten championship games going down to the wire. Ton of fun to cover it with you guys for the 7th straight year.
7 in a row. We haven't missed one.
No.
We've been here every time.
No, we're on quite a streak.
Yeah, we're on a streak.
We're really rolling. Let's send it back to the guys in Chicago.